Hi, I'm Randy Pobst, and I'm at Buttonwillow Raceway here in the beautiful Central Valley of California, driving electric hot rods. Tesla with Unplugged Performance. We're going to run 4 cars in 4 levels of preparation. You guys will be following me in my journey today as we go from dead stock to a little more mods, a little more, and then the full Unplugged Performance all the way.
That should be the pressures once it's on.
Okay, and you got it all warmed up? Ha! It's not necessary, folks.
So today you've been out here with us and have driven 4 different cars. We strategically selected cars that would kind of give a wide range of experiences. The first car that you drove was a factory car, not modified. It was a Tesla Model 3 Performance. And then the 3 other cars had different upgrades that ranged quite a bit from mild to more aggressive. And I'd love to get your feedback of what you noticed the differences were between the cars and between the upgrades, and how you felt each of the upgrades helped or hurt, or what feedback you have in terms of what it did for the car.
Well, let's do them in order of mods.
Any order you like.
We started with a stock Model 3 Performance, similar to what I've tested with Motor Trend and what I worked on track mode for. And that car, I was once again impressed by the power. And what all the Model 3s do very well is they hide their weight. When I drive those cars, they don't feel like over 4,000 pounds to me. They don't ride like it, and they don't turn like it, and they certainly don't accelerate like it.
Low center of gravity is probably a big part of that.
I think so. It is very, very low. I like a compliant car. I really do. And but compliant on the racetrack and compliant on the street are totally different animals.
Indeed. This is the walking that fine line of having one setup that works for both with minimal fuss.
Yeah.
And thankfully, in between sessions, there wasn't really more than 10 minutes of adjustment to get these cars dialed in and back out there.
The high performance handling aspect gives up some of the ride quality, the comfort that comes in a normal Model 3, and in return generates far better handling, especially on track.
You drove one car, Kevin's car, that had a carbon ceramic front brakes with the 6-piston larger calipers. What was your feeling of those brakes?
Well, the first thing I would say is I saw them before I got in.
Sure.
So I had a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And just knowing I have these enormous real live race car brakes.
So hard not to see.
Yeah, it made me willing to charge into the corners hard. Well, having just gotten out of the car from the track here at Buttonwillow, it's striking. The brakes are so powerful and the response is so strong. And that's a combination of the big calipers and rotors. It's well engineered, because even though the caliper is much larger, the brake pedal's still nice and firm. And so the feel and the response is tremendous in the brakes. And it's magnified by the sticky tires, the Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2s.
Yeah.
And they're bigger, they're on a little more wheel.
Yeah. The
car is just more capable in every way. This thing is 100 times better than every other car. I mean, it's fantastic. The braking, I needed a reference. And then it's got proper damping for a racetrack. It's much more track car. It really is a significant step better than any of the other 3 here at the racetrack.
I'd like to hear a little bit about your thoughts on the sway bars. So it's a new product for us. Today we have prototypes. We have 2 different rear bars and then 1 front bar. And you've driven Erik's car, which had the thinner of the 2 rear sway bars. And then you drove Kevin's car with the Cup 2s, and that one has the thicker sway bars. First on Erik's, what could you say about the difference in the sway bars for his car versus Soft's car, which is similar but doesn't have the sway bars?
Well, number 1, the bars are not harsh.
Yeah.
They're not an extreme setup. The car has a lot less body roll than stock.
Do you want stiffer in the front and softer on the rear? We can do both. Right now it's the inverse. Right now the front is soft and the rear is stiff.
The sway bar's great benefit is that they still ride well. You hit bumps with both wheels, but they resist roll. And the Model 3 needs that if you want to drive on a racetrack with it. I
Value
do want to
of
say
that.
that Erik's car was really nice, not with the stiffer springs and bars.
Yeah.
Reduced the vertical motion in the spring.
That's great.
And controlled the roll, which was a big step forward. It's way better than the stock setup.
Nice. So
So
on like
much
the
less-
S area, S curves did great.
That's where it helps the most,
Yeah.
actually.
So these are actually the super performance shocks they sell.
Oh, the great thing about the anti-sway bars is they don't hurt your ride, and they're adjustable. So you can make it the way you want it. And another good thing about the shocks is that the shocks reduce the oversteer. So there are a lot of benefits for high performance handling from especially the shock absorbers, the adjustable ones. They're really, really nice. And then the springs and the bars reduce the body roll, they reduce the lean, and improve the ride control.
The real question, and I don't know if you can estimate it, but having driven a stock car and having driven that, if both cars were at the same battery level and had the same power, what do you think those springs and sway bars are worth for a lap time out here?
I don't think a lot. It's a 2-minute lap. I'm thinking there's probably a couple seconds in it.
I was going to guess you were going to say that.
So all those things are brought better under control with the springs and bars on the car. I would do it in a minute. Oh yeah, we ran them down. Race prepared Subaru BRZ, goodbye. Shelby Mustang, goodbye.
All the cars you're driving today are coming in here pretty soft compared to a track car. And I know that
Yeah.
in an ideal world on the track, everything should be cranked up a bit. Thankfully, 2 of the cars, we have the adjustable coilovers and we can do that
In the car with the shocks in it, well, we turned the shocks up.
significantly.
The control was far better. And what was beautiful was the entry oversteer, the high-speed entry oversteer disappeared. Much better.
Yeah?
Much better. None of the entry oversteer that the stock one has.
Okay.
It's just planted. But it's handling way better. What I also appreciated about the shocks, especially when they were turned up, was slowing down the roll. It struck me as a shock that is a very good street sport shock.
Yeah, the car you're referring to was definitely a street setup. And interestingly, we have a couple different versions that you drove. The other car with the Cup 2s has a double adjustable, more track-oriented version. But were you able to feel much of a difference between the 2 sets of the coilovers, the black car and the gray car?
Oh, definitely. There's clearly another step on the gray car that's more track oriented. So the extra damping was appreciated. It was obviously another step in the right direction, but it still felt like it was on a level that would still be very livable on the street. What I saw and what I'm excited about is the capability that's in the suspension and the tires and the brakes. There was a big step, and I didn't see that at first. But when I got back in the car after having just driven the stock one,
Yeah.
holy cow, it's a whole nother step.
That's awesome that you can kind of go back to back and try these different cars throughout the day. I think that's really helpful for us to get that feedback and probably interesting for you just to have these different experiences with
Oh yeah.
95% the same car, but then these little changes to see what it does.
Yeah, little changes, big difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing it. It's really a pleasure to watch you on
Thank you,
track
man.
doing that.
Loved it. Thank you.
Until next time.
Unplugged Performance, people!
Next up, Randy Pobst talks about developing track mode and an audience Q&A right now.
I am Randy Pobst. I've been a professional race car driver my whole life. I'm proud of that because if you go pay somebody and you drive in a professional race, that does not make you a pro driver. Pro driver is when somebody pays you money to race their car. And I'm proud of that. There aren't very many guys like that genuinely make a living driving a race car. I had this long career. Pro racing starts slowing down a little bit. I'm like, I think I'll let those 20-year-olds fight it out. And I got lucky and stumbled into this career with Motor Trend magazine as a track tester. I also do some writing. And that led me to this connection with Tesla. Because with the, I've been working with Motor Trend about 10 years. And it's in only the last 5 years or so, electric cars have really started to become a reality, especially due to Tesla, who just raised the bar. And I remember seeing a Tesla display in a mall, and they had just a chassis, and the batteries were all on the floor. And they talked about that low center of gravity. And I thought, these guys know what they're talking about. And then I drove one, a Model S, and I was very, very impressed. I think it's so cool that this was created in the Bay Area somewhere, San Francisco, and they just made this car, and it's fantastic. And so I respect the brand a lot. On the other hand, the Model S is not real happy on the track. The electrons get hot fast, and so you can't run flat out. I discovered with Motor Trend, not very long. And but in the time you got, it's fantastic. Well, then comes the Model 3, right? And the Model 3, I'm no expert on Tesla, but I know I tested one with Motor Trend, and we were able to track that sucker, but it was a little unpredictable. That was my biggest complaint to the Tesla guys that were there. And they tell me over and over, Tesla's a very small company. And the good thing about that smallness is that they can be quick. And just a couple weeks later, they called me up and invited me to come to a track day to work on this track mode that they were developing to make the car happier on a racetrack. And we did it at Willow Springs on the streets of Willow, and it was just one day. And we had a guy named Lars Moravy there, and another young guy whose name I can't remember, two guys. And they were basically the chassis dynamics department of Tesla. And it was incredible because we had the car, I felt like I had it right in the palm of my hands. And they'd already done a lot of really great work. I went out in the car in track mode, and it was far better than it had been. And it was much more predictable. That was my biggest desire, was for the car for me to have a good idea of what's going to happen when I get that next corner and I brake and turn the wheel. Before track mode, it was different a lot of times, and made me very uncomfortable because I'm trying to go really, really fast. And to do that, I have to know what the car's going to do. I don't care what it does, it just needs to do the same thing with the same inputs. And it wasn't. And they came back much, much more predictable. And I rode with the young engineer guy, and he had a laptop. And it reminded me of Too Fast, Too Furious. when Paul Walker's zooming down the straightaway in a drag race and he's entering the computer while he's racing. Well, that's what we were doing. And what he was doing primarily, as far as I know, was he was adjusting the power distribution front to rear and the regen front to rear. The regeneration from slowing down. And that was fascinating to me. And one of the things that I gave my advice on was that there was way too much regen, because when I was entering the corner, I'd be done braking and I'd do this brake release like I do in gasoline-powered cars, and the car kept slowing down, like a lot. I would have to go back to power just to keep it from slowing down, and it was really odd. Well, let's call him Alex. Alex over there, like that, boom, gone. Fixed it. I went, wow, what else can we do? It's like having a genie, right? You just rub the lamp. I wanted to rotate a little bit on corner edge. Wow! You know, I mean the very next corner. And so we made the car as stable as we could get it without creating too much understeer. And I was only a small part of it. I was like trimming the edges, right? And then reduce that regen so it felt more natural. I wanted it to feel more like it's just part of the braking. And I just got out of a Model 3, both a modified one by Unplugged Performance. Our host, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At TeslaCorsa.
Right.
Looks like Schaffer, but it's Schaefer, right?
It is.
Looks like Pobst, but it's Pobst. And anyway, I just got out of one, and then a stock one even. The braking is good. It's just if you brake real hard in a dead stock car, you'll overheat the brakes and you have to slow down. And so be aware of that. Always take good care of your brakes. But the more you upgrade them, like the other car I drove had these carbon brakes this big, we could just go crazy with that car. They're like Ferrari brakes. I mean, they're full on race serious equipment. And these cars are very powerful. They're also relatively heavy. And both of those things point right at the brake heat. The more power you got, the hotter your brakes get. The hotter the car is, the hotter your brakes get. The better your tires are, the better your brakes get. So anytime you drive faster or you upgrade your tires, you're going to get your brakes hotter. That just happens as part of it. And so by the end of the day, we had gone back and forth with this tuning on the track mode, and the day was over, and I wanted another day, you know, or even like maybe just one more session. That's the mantra of racers, you know, just one more session. So I still think it could be a little bit better, and something that we discovered that Soft let me drive his car this morning, which is dead stock, except for some Michelin Super Sports on it, great street tire. And what I found was in entering the bus stop here, these little offset kink things they're fast maneuver. It feels really fast. I don't have time to look down and see what the number is, but I think it's probably at least 80 or more. And the car is sensitive to lifting off the throttle without braking at a high speed. And in fact, I've already ridden Lars, and I told him that. And because that can be hairy. Anytime you're turning the steering wheel and you want to lift off the throttle, be very gentle with what you do with that throttle. Anytime you get on the throttle and the steering wheel's turned, you're cornering, be very gentle when you get on the throttle. Because your primary job as a driver is weight management. You're moving weight with the pedals. Your pedals have more to do with where you're going than your steering wheel does, because the pedals put the load on that. Now, I told those of you that were here, I love this demonstration, let's do it again. You already had seats, so it probably won't work. But everybody put your foot out in front of you and slide it across the floor. That's your front tires when you're on the gas. Now lean on it. Now try to slide it. You feel that? That's traction. That's what happens when you slow down. You move weight forward and you improve the grip of your front tires and you take grip away from your back tires. So anytime you approach a corner, keep slowing down until you get aimed to where you want to go. You slow down on the brake pedal is for entering the corner. The gas pedal is for leaving the corner. There's a great myth, especially among American drivers, and especially in the Southeast, and especially in pickup trucks, that you power through a corner and you power out of trouble. Usually the power makes you just crash faster. And so use that power to exit a corner. Front drivers, it's a little bit different. Power can straighten you out, but it can also make you crash faster. So we don't have any front drivers in Tesla land, right? Correct. So you don't have to worry about that. You have all-wheel drive, which is really ideal. And the Tesla all-wheel drive is beautifully balanced. It doesn't understeer. If you've ever driven an Audi on track, you know that their four-wheel drive makes them understeer. Same with Volvos. They tend to understeer because the acceleration is making the front wheels lighter, right? But they're getting, typically on older all-wheel drive systems, they're getting half the power. So the front tires are now being asked to steer and drive. And the tires can't do a lot of two things at once. They'd start sliding. So only make your tires do one thing at a time, a lot of one thing at a time. So when you come up to a corner, you go from the throttle to the brake in a hurry. That's one time you're allowed to not be very smooth, is when you're going straight and you want to go from a lot of throttle to stopping. Boom, do it quick. Now, none of this, braking straight, you can do that a lot. Now when you enter the corner and you start turning the wheel, keep braking, but only very, very lightly. And that does two things for you. It keeps the weight on the front tires so they steer better. The other thing that it does for you that's really great is it keeps your foot away from the throttle. Because guess what? You gotta wait a little bit longer than you think you do, typically. Now, every car is different, but typically you gotta wait because it takes time to get turned and get pointed. And you do that real smoothly. You ease off the brake till you get pointed, and then you ease on the throttle until you get straight. And your cars are powerful. That's the best thing about a Tesla is, well, to me, is that it's so powerful and it's instant. And so when you go to the throttle, it'll probably be in the corner, right? You drive down to a corner, slow down, get turned, then you go to the throttle, but you're still turning. So go to the throttle very lightly and then roll it in as you straighten out. That's why smooth is fast, because you never overload your tires by saying, turn a lot, now accelerate a lot. No, they won't do that, they just slide. And so if you're sliding a lot on power, your problem is with your right foot. It's got a mind of its own. It's not easy to control the right foot. It's way up under the dash. It's a long way from the brain. So control that right foot. You're turning. Roll that power in gently. You've got instant torque, tons of it. You don't even need a lot of throttle to get a lot of torque. Because your greatest torque is at what RPM? Zero. Tesla people. That's why they use them in locomotives. What's heavier than a locomotive? Almost nothing. In fact, they'd probably be good in a ship, an electric motor. Yeah, I don't know. They just go nuclear.
That's electric.
Anyway, that's my ADD kicking in again. You know how fast a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is?
Classified.
Really fast. Yeah, it's crazy fast. Like they'll go like 50 or 60 miles an hour. It's the size of a city block. Anyway, so smooth is fast, and take care of your brakes if you're dead stock. You know, if you're aggressive. If you drive kind of cool, you'll be fine, because the Tesla's really got great brakes, and the regen is a lot of that. The more you use your regen, the easier it is on your brakes. It's a beautiful combination.
So would you recommend people that don't have the performance brakes to use full regen? Or to take it down to low regen?
Even
if they're performance, should they use full regen?
That's what I say, because, well, one, you get your battery charged, but two, it's easier on your brakes. And brakes are highly stressed in a racetrack environment.
I've just heard a lot of people that are racers comment that the regen throws them off on the corners, the way you were talking about earlier, when you're coming up to a corner and you want to keep all that speed. You know, you want to go from the accelerator to the brake, and then if you're using the regen, you're not really doing it the same way as you would in a gas car that doesn't have any real engine slowing coming up.
Yeah, well, that's sort of my question I had actually. So I get this question a lot from Tesla drivers. What do you think? Is there a method people, or I mean, it's going to be different for different cars and maybe different whether the packages and all that. But is there a way, in your opinion, to have your braking, trail braking, trailing throttle / trailing regen in this case / throttle sequence to manage it so that you are replicating what you would have in a non-regen car? And like, what's your opinion on that? And in other words, I'm assuming to go fastest, you're gonna idealize all of those that sequence, right? So what's the role of the regen in that sort of process, in lieu of a trailing throttle situation?
Now, I just got out of a dead stock one, and I run it soft. We were on full regen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because those two reasons. I want full regen are because I want some of my power back, and it helps the brakes, because the brakes will overheat in a 4,000-pound car going 100 miles an hour, having to slow down 4 times a lap. So I didn't feel that when I drove the Tesla just now. I came down to the corner, I hit the brakes, eased off as I turned in, and it was fine.
You had a nice smooth brief moment of trailing and then, or are you going straight brakes, throttle? Are you going?
No.
So there's a moment where the regen is doing.
Didn't you hear my talk? I just
No, but my point
release
is,
the brakes slowly.
but my point is, as you're trail braking in, there's a moment where you're trailing throttle / regen, and then you ease on the throttle.
Depends on the corner.
Okay, yeah,
is
but
Depends
that's
on the corner. Yeah.
But your
Like
timing,
the
your timing
sweeper.
also works. How are you like?
Yes, yes. The sweeper has a long, it's a long corner that decreases in radius. So it's getting tighter for a long time. The sweeper is this long 180 right, clear over after Phil Hill.
Before the
hill,
S's.
the jump turn. Yeah. So in that corner, I enter it really fast, but the regen is too much for that long entry. Then I have to actually go back to power to keep the car from slowing down too much. But it's not terribly unlike having a car, internal combustion car, and being off throttle. Because that's deceleration. The bigger your engine is, the more it'll decelerate. The older the car is, the more it will, because modern cars don't decelerate very hard. I personally think that's because of emissions. They don't want real high vacuum because it sucks oil past the rings and it's dirty. But for whatever it is, they don't slow down much. Modern cars last 25 years or so. But if you have an old car, if you're in a 72 Corvette and you lift off the throttle, oh, that thing slows down. And the bigger your motor, the more it does. And that's a little bit like the effect of regen or trailing throttle. It transfers weight forward, same kind of thing. What's tricky about the Tesla is that off throttle, it's transferring weight. It's got a decel force on all four wheels. And Tesla has adjusted that, right? And I thought we got it pretty good in general, except just this morning, like I mentioned, in the high-speed stuff, it's really too much. So you have to be very gentle, which is a good rule for life. Anytime you back off the throttle in a high-speed corner, you're transferring weight forward, right? Car steers better. In a high-speed corner, you gotta be real gentle with that. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on using track mode for a complete beginner? Do you think trial by fire, just get in there and do it, or?
Yeah, because it's not, it's made for the track. It's better suited. It's the tool for the trade. The car will just behave better in the track situation. It's not like it gives you more power. It doesn't turn the throttle on for you.
Right.
You're still the one doing it.
But you teach
Randy, you missed the car, but Model 3 go backwards all the way off the track there at like very fast.
Right where I said.
Yeah, right. He just went. Bro, I was just watching like big screen TV, you know.
Thank you, Joe.
It's actually a video we're putting out.
I got in trouble, well, not quite. Right where this, is that red car right there?
Yeah.
You gotta back off a little bit and turn in there. And when you do, it better be a little bit for the Model 3 on track mode, or it's gonna be a little tail happy. Yes, sir?
Just to your point, I found that the transition from like braking to going around the current, if you want to like coast through it, that's not off throttle. And that's kind of the biggest thing is like coasting is not off throttle at all. Just stay on the gas and know that like if you're in 10%, that means you're braking a little bit. If you're in 20%, you know, you're braking probably not at all. If you're in 50%, you're gassing. So like that's kind of what I think you were trying to get at.
Off throttle is decel or regen. Right?
Yeah, exactly. If you're fully off throttle, it's significantly
But you're saying
decelerating.
that if you're on throttle 10%, it's almost like neutral. It's like you're not actually accelerating. That's more like
You can
what would be
still
like a
regen
trailing
while
throttle
on
in a
the
non-regen car or something.
That's exactly it. You can hit it neutral if you hold the pedal at the right spot. If you don't hold the pedal at the right spot, you're not at neutral.
Yeah, so that like just lifting off the throttle, like
Anybody that's driven
quickly, unless you're just ready to brake right immediately.
Somebody who only races in Dublin.
So it's throttle, then it goes neutral, then it starts to regen as you let go.
You have the whole band on the pedal.
If you're in track mode, does low and standard have on the regen setting have any factor, or once you hit track mode, it does?
Track mode ups the regen to max.
It does what it does. Okay.
If you jerk your foot off the pedal, the low regen is not going to give you as much braking as the high regen. So you don't have to feather your foot as much as he's talking about. It's easier with that gearbox.
Yes, sir?
Is there anything about track mode you changed today other than the regen situation?
The car ended up with too much mid-corner understeer.
Okay.
So I would free it up a little bit more right in the middle of the corner.
Okay.
When you first begin to accelerate.
So you would put more
Yeah,
power on the
we
rear?
just ran out of time. I wanted one more session.
How would you change it? Would you put more power on the rear?
On the rear.
On the rear, okay.
On power, from the initial, right?
Okay.
Early on.
Really?
I would add a little bit more of that probably in the front rear power distribution. The thing is, I feel it right in the middle of the corner when I'm not accelerating much. I'm starting to contradict myself. That might actually be better adjusted with the suspension, like a bigger front bar. Because when you're in the middle of the corner and you're not using much power, you're leaning on the springs and sway bars. And typically stiffer back makes the back slide sooner, and stiffer front makes the front slide sooner. So that might actually be a suspension thing more than it is a track mode power distribution thing. I don't think track mode can affect the suspension. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's
By the end of the day, we might have an answer on that because we have adjustable bars on a couple of those cars. We can play around with your ideas there and see if we can come up with something.
So you said that first car I drove had a big bar on the back.
The first car is a big
Had
bar
both
in the front
bars.
and the back.
Yeah.
And we can play with the ratio front to rear and see what you're happy with.
I liked it stiff. The stock one had too much understeer right in the middle of the corner. And that's part of the tricky part is when you can adjust this power distribution on and off gas, you want to make sure you don't lose track of what the mechanical suspension's doing. This reminds you when I was testing McLaren's. McLaren's from the MP412C have been very high-tech and very electronically controlled. And I didn't like the level of electronic control. It didn't feel very natural. And by about the third one, I did the MP412C, then the 650S, then the 675 LT, and all of them weren't very natural. And I called the McLaren guy over at one of the Motor Trend tests, and I said, look, you got to let your mechanical engineers have this car longer before you give it to the electrical engineers, because the chassis wasn't right, and they're covering it with electronics, and that's tricky, you know. And we only had one day. Ben works on that stuff all the time, so there's a chance to adjust things more, and that's part of what we're doing today. But I think maybe that's really not track mode. I think that's really the suspension is biased towards understeer, which is
How most manufacturers?
common in street cars, right? So that they're easy to drive. But we also need to adjust that regen at high speeds without braking. It's just a lift. It's actually better, more stable under braking. So that's one of the half things that I would change. I love the way it comes off the corner. That's the best thing about Tesla on track. All that torque and the all-wheel drive and being balanced on power, it just really goes. Just don't get greedy, because there's so much power. You gotta just roll that in. You don't slam that thing down. Yes, sir.
So this is a question related to what you were talking about, but it's for Ben. Having taken apart different Model 3s, is the hardware different between rear-wheel drive, dual motor, and performance? Or is it the same?
Of changes, but all of them you can cross retrofit. So, you know, there's differences in a lot of small, obviously the brakes are obvious, but also the sway bars are slightly different. So when we were building sway bars, we were looking at the diameters of the dual motor versus the regular. But all of these things are retrofittable. Even if Tesla doesn't advertise it as that, you can buy the parts and fit them on the car and play around with these different things. But there's nothing that I would say is massively significant other than the brakes. The brakes are a big change in terms of performance. The sway bars, if you're an advanced driver, I think you need to feel a difference. It might be want to say it's like 1 mil thicker. I could be wrong on that, but on the aftermarket.
From Tesla?
Yeah, between the rear drive and the dual motor.
Okay.
But then the aftermarket, our company and others can do things that are a much larger extreme for a more tailored audience. Tesla's trying to make all these cars so your grandmother can
For
drive
everybody.
them. Yeah. And we can do things that are a little bit more extreme.
My grandmother hates my car. It's too quiet.
It's too quiet.
Yeah. She just thinks it's weird. She started out in horse and carriage, so I can.
God bless her.
I have a question on, just 'cause I get this question too from people about who's going to the track, frequently going more and more. They're starting to complain about outside edge tire wear. Is there a camber and alignment move people should consider, can consider, or is there no way to do it anyway and forget about it? Let's do it with camber. And basically, mainly focusing on tire wear concerns, not necessarily balance concerns. Let's just say tire wear concerns. Is there anything to be done there?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of solutions in the aftermarket. We're experimenting a lot on Kevin's car in particular, where we have more control than we've had in the past. Kevin's car has adjustable front upper control arms and also rear camber and tow arms. So we had West End, who you probably know, do the setup on his car. And we're still trying to figure out more on the track side of things. On the street side of things, I haven't heard as many complaints.
Oh, I was only thinking track.
Yeah, track side of things, yeah, there's still a lot to learn there. I think we're still in the early stages of figuring out what's ideal.
Yeah, and radial tires love camber. In general, radial tires love camber. They like to be leaned in. And your tires will tell you. If you're wearing that outside edge, most likely you don't have enough negative camber. It could also be just an extreme understeer. That'll wear the outside edge even if it's not camber. My Volvo champ car thing does that.
Randy, I have a question for you. This actually didn't come up online. You've actually covered so many of the online questions. I don't have anything on my phone that I can find that's new. But this is a question a lot of people ask, and I know there's no right answer. But in the aftermarket, when you're modifying a Tesla, there's two schools of thought. The common school of thought is you go with the staggered wheel setup, where you go 9 front, 10 rear, 235 front tire, 275 rear tire. Most of us here probably feel that the better setup on track is a square setup, where you run the same size tire front and rear and go as wide as you can fit, or whatever it may be. How would you describe that to someone who's thinking about getting aftermarket wheels and tires? What's the scenario where you want to go staggered versus square, and what's your opinion of that?
Okay, well, number one, I would drive the car first and see how much it understeers, if it understeers. It is all-wheel drive, right? So it's a little bit unusual to have that much tire size stagger in an all-wheel drive. The all-wheel drives usually have more even tire sizes. And so I think in general, it makes sense to have similar sizes or closer. Did you say 235, 275?
That's what a lot of guys are doing. There's actually...
That's a big split.
This is not official, but the rumor is that even Elon's own car, he has 275s on the rear and 235s up front. So
because it looks cool.
Yes. Maybe because it looks cool.
I haven't seen Elon on the track.
But it makes more sense to go be closer to a square setup for track work. For the braking and for the balance. The car's reasonably, it's well balanced front and rear, right?
Yeah.
50-50-ish.
Yeah.
And so with all-wheel drive and at 50-50, you're going to be working all four about the same. Except when you accelerate really hard, it transfers weight back and the rear tires do more of the work. But in track mode, the distribution adds power, more power than the rear than does the front. Because that just makes sense. I found on my race cars that it had to be at least 67% to the rear to start to wake up a car and make it be balanced as an all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is ideal. It's just harder to drift.
So you're saying that
Oh, I wanted to say something about the regen too, or for you too. The regen, not everybody trail brakes. And not all cars want trail brake due to their setup. If the car's real tail happy, it turns real quick and easy, you don't want much or maybe even any trail brake spec Miata. Although the new spec Miatas are a little better. But Miatas in general, they turn so quick with the wheel, you don't need to help it much. And if you do, you'll spin it, which I did the very first time I went out on a practice session in a Miata in 1992. So if you're not a trail breaker, if you brake hard and straight, come off the brake and then turn, which is wrong, by the way, you're going to come off the brake and the car is going to be regenning, and you're not going to like it. And I think that's what some of these people's complaints may be. Well, they're probably straight breakers.
My question kind of came from electric motorcycles racing, not Tesla racing.
Yeah.
So there you're also concerned about heating up the battery and heating up the motor. So you don't want to put the regen into it as much as the Tesla. Tesla's kind of figured out how to distribute the heat and not worry about it as much. But electric motorcycles are just now coming into the fact where they can get on the track and not overheat. So it's a little bit of a different thing, but for new people, the other question I had while I'm speaking here, Ben, the $35,000 Model 3, if you were to take, is that rear-wheel drive or is that all-wheel drive? You know?
Rear-wheel drive.
It's rear-wheel drive. If you were to take that to a track, what would you do to it, and how much would it cost to make it fun, not necessarily the fastest car on the track? But I don't want to put a $50,000 car on the track. A few years from now, after the $35,000 ones have come off lease, I might pick one up to go play on the track with. You know, I don't risk my big, expensive cars. So, what would you say for somebody that's interested in that 3 to 5 years from now? Is that viable, or should they just go for the performance?
No, I mean, there's many correct answers to that question, and Randy, please chime in after me, because you're a real driver and I'm just a guy who makes parts.
Yeah, I like rear-wheel drive, so
but yeah,
it appeals to me.
From my point of view, I think that a lot of the upgrade concepts are similar and applicable to everything. I think that that car being more underpowered, you don't want to have too much power on it, whereas some of these faster cars, you know, just as much grip as you can get is better. But on a car like that, it might be more fun with more of a factory tire setup and not something too aggressive.
Okay, my experience is with the long-range rear-wheel drive. So how much of a power hit is there?
A lot slower based on, I haven't driven one, but based on the numbers, it's quite a bit slower. So the short answer is it won't be fun if you're used to a fast car, but if you want to just practice your driving skill, you're measuring against your own baseline, so you can have plenty of fun with that. You're still going to want to do brake upgrades the same way you would anything else, but I think there will be less of a need for extremes because the car just doesn't need as much grip with that power level. That's my theory, but you probably have...
It's lighter too, right?
It's a bit lighter. It's not, I mean, it's still a heavy car by race car standards, but...
Could you pop a performance motor, right?
Better off just buying a used performance car at that point. Get into all those craziness.
Physically do it with the software would not be happy.
Right, yeah.
And the battery. What would you do to a stock car? Coilovers, springs, aero first, like is there an order?
I need more track time. Oh, shocks.
Shocks.
I would do shocks first. The stock Model 3 is very soft. It's a street car.
Right.
Great ride, but on the racetracks make things feel soft. It exaggerates it. I would do that first.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This might be already known by the people in the room, but what is your daily driver? And if it's not a Tesla, what would it take for, like, basically be like us?
You know what? I hate when people ask me that because I've been shopping for like some kind of cool car for like 3 years. And so all I have is old junk. Sure. I love it though, but I just sold an E46 330 that I was going to turn into a spec E46 BMW, but I found out what it cost and I changed my mind. It's expensive. I mean, the 330 needs a lot of nice parts to turn it into a race car, like the diff. And it's expensive. And I thought, nah, I don't think so. And I heard some real wisdom from this guy here. You've raced, talking about the cost of the car you go on track with, because tracks are risky. And especially if you're racing, cars can get eliminated so quickly. It doesn't happen very often. You know, I got my original race car, 1985 VW Golf. I still have it. It made it. But some guy behind you could lose his brakes and boom, and that's a bad day. It's just part of the game. You got to go in with your eyes open. Yes, sir?
Considering the Model 3 as the regen, did you left brake or did you right foot brake?
Oh, yeah, I'm right foot because I'm old school.
Okay.
But I did do the Thunder Hill 25 hours. In fact, we won up there in a Norma prototype, and you can't get to the gas with your left foot. The steering column's in the way. So I have to left foot brake. And I got okay at it. You know, it's just a matter of training the left foot. The final answer from me on that is left foot brake. Because your left foot's sitting there not doing anything.
Not in the Tesla, you have to hold yourself. I'm like I'm pegged on the desk foot. I want to try and left foot brake just for the shits and giggles of it, but I'm like, I can't keep myself in my seat.
You know, a quick, easy answer to that, maybe you've seen this, they make a clip.
The G-lock or whatever.
Yeah, and you pull your belt, your 3-point belt tight, and it holds you in.
Right.
A good tight belt, you're right, it's fantastic. You feel better what the car's doing, and you're safer. Yeah. I don't know if Teslas do this, they probably do.
It takes modifications to fit the CG lock.
You have to cut it down.
Really? Oh.
It doesn't. It's
Doesn't
really
fit a
hard to put
Tesla,
on
you
the-
mean?
Oh no, just CG lock, the third party.
Yeah, you're both saying the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, it's tricky getting it on the Tesla. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have a question that might relate to the other answer. It's, we have heard that your experience and input was put into Tesla's track mode. Has anything of that rolled over to long range drive or like real world drive cars? One of the updates that I guess many of us got was a higher regen, and at some point it was an update. So was any of your experience pour over to the non-performance vehicles?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Tesla question. Ask Lars.
Have you tested some of the non-performance vehicles and see that they on par or maybe
From Tesla?
Yes.
I did, before we did track mode.
Okay.
But not since.
Okay.
And like I said, I found them unpredictable. I didn't like that. I do not like roaring up on a corner, not knowing exactly what's going to happen if I turn the wheel 20 degrees and brake with 30 pounds. And mechanical cars, you know, that's always the same because it's mechanical, unless some brakes. But with the Tesla, it was different. By the way, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, no, Quadrifoglio, it's different. It's great up to about 80 or 90%. I'm pretty sure it has an E throttle or an E brake. Yeah, I should know more about this, but too many cars. But I know I didn't like the Alfa. I love the Alfa, but when I try to go 100%, it does different things when I turn the wheel and hit the brake pedal. That's really bad because I want to stay on the racetrack. You know, bring the car back home. Yes, sir.
Question is sort of for new guys here. Your sort of adrenaline rush and heartbeat during a course like normal. What should that be like? Should there be moments where you're like, wow, that was the edge, or should you always be very cool? What would be like the opposite?
Your mood tells you a lot about how your car's handling, right? If you're scared, you're going too fast and your car's getting loose. If you're frustrated, your car's understeering and you're going too fast. If you're happy, life's good. This is a track day, right? We're just having fun. We're not trying to win a race. There's nothing on the line here, and you want to bring your cars back in the same beautiful condition they arrived, except the brakes are worn more and the tires are worn more. So keep that in mind and keep your mental state calm.
You know, heart rate machine.
Yeah. And guess what? I'm an excitable person. I would never make a good chief steward because I'd be like, what are you doing? You're a maniac! It wouldn't work. So in my whole career, I've always tried to hold my mood down, this kind of Zen thing, and I do better. When I autocrossed, I was a much better driver on fun runs. Why? Because I wasn't trying as hard. I was relaxed. And so be relaxed. If you're irritated, pit and take a deep breath, get a drink, whatever. Don't drive angry. Like the groundhog in my favorite movie ever, Groundhog Day. If the guy ahead of you is making you mad, pit. If the guy behind you is making you mad, you're welcome. Thank you. Same kind of thing.
Actually,
you can just
timing, anyone that's in the advanced group, you guys should get ready to rock.
Yeah, advanced group. That includes me.